We're here in Larne Greenland Cemetery, close to the 72nd anniversary of the loss of the MV Princess Victoria on the 31st of January 1953. I wrote a book about the disaster on the 70th anniversary, detailing the final resting place of 70 of the victims. So we're here, say, in Larne Greenland to find a few of those select individuals and talk about them. 135 people died as a result of the disaster. No women and children were amongst the survivors. So follow me as we go to a few of these graves. This is the final resting place then of Roseanne Baxter, and she's commemorated on the headstone here. She was 39-year-old stewardess from the town of Larne here. She'd been a wren during the Second World War, and she worked for the Cross Channel Ferry initially on the Princess Margaret before she moved to the Princess Victoria. She was last seen on the ship's deck holding a baby in her arms. And there was a number of insertions in the local newspapers, including one from the Chain Memorial Woman's LOL number 33. Her funeral, because she was a popular lady, there's photographs of the huge crowds that came out close to Larne here to pay her their final respects to Roseanne. So in the side panel here, commemorates Robert John Holden Ritchie, died 31st January 1953, result of MV Princess Victoria disaster. He was 22 years old at the time of his death, and he lived at 22 Newington Avenue here in the town of Larne. He served as an apprenticeship at Tom Graham's Butchers in the town. He'd been working in England, and he was returning from home to Larne. His body was recovered by the SS Clonlee off the Isle of Man 5 days after the disaster. He was a member of the Orange Order and a very keen lambeg drummer, also interested in pigeon racing. So another commemoration on this side panel is fine, unusual for this cemetery, a kind of Celtic style cross here, commemorates Robert John Holden Ritchie. Two more victims here buried side by side. It's just worth noting the difference in the commemoration. You can see here William McGarrell, who died at sea as a result of the MV Princess Victoria disaster. He was 55 years old, and he was a quartermaster on the ship. He lived at 15 Glen Road in Larne with his wife Annie and 5 children. He'd fought at the Battle of the Somme, and amongst the death notices then were from the officers and members of the MISBA RPB at number 88. And then beside him then, it's barely marked at all, but it's the final resting place of Andrew McMutry. He was married to Annie with one son, and he was 56 years old, living at 3 Drummond Street in the town, and he was a ship's carpenter in the Princess Margaret, and he was travelling home for weekend leave, so he wasn't actually working on the Princess Victoria. He spent most of his life working, however, at sea. When the Princess Victoria got into trouble, McMurtry had assisted the crew in their failed attempt to close the breech stern doors, and he collapsed on the car deck as a result of his exertions before he was assisted back to the ship's lounge. So he was also a member of the Masonic Lodge, in this case 175 at Relu, as well as the Larne branch of the British Legion. So he rests in this essentially unmarked, apart from this little urn here at it. So that's two victims buried side by side. Amongst the names commemorated here in the Parker grave, you'll see here William McC. Parker and his dates, born on the 14th June 1920, and then it says he's passed away. A result of Princess Victoria disaster. I think this is a new headstone. William was the second steward on the ship, and he was aged 35. He was a native of Castle Kennedy in Scotland. He lived in Larne with his wife Nellie and 3 children. He lived here for more than a decade. And at the time of his death, he was living at 13 Waterloo Road. Aged 15, he'd started working on the Princess ships as a pantry boy, and he'd been promoted on a number of occasions. During 20 years of service, he'd served on the Princess Maud at Dunkirk and at the Normandy invasion. He was described as, quote, always being well-dressed, very popular, and very generous and kind, close quote. So this is William. I think it's a new headstone, but you can see on the top the thistle to a nod to his Scottish heritage. This headstone commemorates William Hooper. He was a 17-year-old pantry boy on the ship, and he lived at 48 Bank Road at Larne with his parents, William and Elizabeth, and 6 siblings. He'd always expressed an interest in going to sea, and 2 of his brothers had previously also served under Princess Victoria. William had worked on the route for the previous 11 months and just transferred from the Princess Margaret to the Princess Victoria 4 weeks before his death. The funeral notice for William Hooper stated, "On his soul, sweet Jesus, have mercy." So William was the second cousin of another pantry boy on the ship, William McAllister, who was the last of the local survivor to have passed away. So this is William Hooper, commemorated on this family headstone here in Larne, Greenland. Okay, we're here on the 31st of January 2025, and it's the 72nd anniversary of the tragic loss of the MV Princess Victoria. It was a cross-channel ferry sailing from Stranraer here to Larne. So behind me, you can hear the bagpipes, but behind me is the memorial to the victims. And today, say on the 72nd anniversary, then there have been 2 new names unveiled. So by my reckoning, that takes out the number of fatalities up to 137. And sadly, there was no women and children amongst the survivors. They all got into a lifeboat and all perished, sadly, on that fateful day, 31st January 1953. So just on the 70th anniversary of the loss of the MV Princess Victoria, I released a book here during the inaugural Princess Victoria Memorial Lecture. It was called Where Terror Came by Sea, and it details on the 70th anniversary 70 victims, either buried or commemorated all around Northern Ireland. So there's quite a number of them in the local Larne Greenland Cemetery, but my travels and the research took me as far away as Omagh, Derry and Enniskillen. So again, just remember, on the 72nd anniversary of the loss of Princess Victoria, the 137 victims.